I would like to do is that quickly go through some kind of, not a synthesis, but some reflection based on what we discussed yesterday in order to enrich the debate with some ideas. We are talking here about civic buildings and public buildings, and of course there are several types of civic buildings. I'm not going to be too pedagogic or to pontify, but basically there is this a category of civic buildings which are very representative, which are a representation of the authority, of the power, or the power to be seen, which is just there to legitimize the power, and the consequences is that people are submitted, it's submission and dependent. They have to accept the reconnaissance. They have to accept it's accepted reconnaissance by the building, or it's false reconnaissance, and sometimes it implies exclusion. These are examples of city halls which are representative of power, very strong power, and you could see the architecture is an architecture of power. It's really overwhelming the people. You see that from distances. You don't want to get close to it. It could be frightened sometimes. Despite modern architecture in Toronto or in Berlin, it's also an expression of power, an expression of arrogance, expression of richness, of certitude. In Berlin, is that the democratic process is transparent, just to be seen, not to be participate. And you have to go on top of the Reichstag and look down on the people. Look down, arrogance. Also, I, the people, I do look down on my elected people, and elected people do what they want inside their glass houses. Example also of overwhelming power of architecture, modern and neo-Gothic architectures. The one to the right in Salt Lake City add also some other elements to the power, some masculine, strong masculinity in front of the city hall. It's quite disgusting. There are things that architectures also make mistakes. These are city halls in Texas, and that is a frightening also type of architecture. But that is, I would say, the responsibility of the architect, maybe not of the mayor. But nonetheless, it is something that we should avoid in our modern times, to avoid this kind of thing. Another type of city buildings or civic buildings is those which are much more active, which try to create active public space, try to illustrate the freedom of choice, the differences of opinions, acknowledge the plurality of opinion, let people move into the space. It's much more collaborative urbanism, as coined by John. It's another type of aesthetics. It shows the fluidity of social values. Example, not perfect example, but a good example is the City Hall of The Hague, where you have an internal street which go across the whole City Hall. However, the city council chamber is quite up in the stairs, in the floors. No, the city chamber is just overlooking the street. The city chamber is overlooking the street, and the waiting room is also overlooking the street. The point is that it should have been open. And the city hall closed the doors. Richard Meyer, when he designed the building, wanted to be totally open. The city hall, in the end, decided to close the door, and therefore people don't cross it. Nonetheless, all the counters to welcome the citizens, all the administrative businesses, is done on both sides of the streets, which is a very democratic street to a certain extent. And outside, you have other functions, such as the library, exactly the same design as San Jose, where the library is outside of the city hall, which create another type of activities. In The Hague, you have also a public square in front of it, with the fountains, with a skateboard platform, and you have also shops. There is a shop because it was the former landowner, and he still has his furniture shop around it, but it's well integrated, it goes quite well. If I show that Richard Meyer again, and it was shown this morning again, is for the brief that the city hall should help, the building should have the purpose of celebration, education, and cultural enrichment. It's not only administrative function. It's much more than that, much more wider purposes. That questions the place of urban design in the development process. It has been extensively discussed by John, and to a large extent also by Larry this morning. But basically, design is thinking and dialogue, and the more important word is a dialogue. So design can help the democratic dialogue by showing the people, the decision makers, the stakeholders, that certain type of design may be conducive to more participation, but with the risk of the seduction and the fallacy of the image that could be used as a marketing tool rather than an exploratory tool, which have to be very careful to avoid that. Now, what is the meaningless, or how a civic building could be meaningful? And that depends on the quality of the urban project it's part of. It has been said, and we will discuss it in few instances. In the way that the civic building has the capacity to merge and to partner with other institutions that part of the community, and also be able to enlarge the range of civic function hosted in the building, or permitted by the building. Administration, obviously, participation, certainly, but also empowerment of the citizen. So there are, in the United States, a lot of municipalities or city halls are offering places for courses, for civic courses, for training, for health services to the citizen, in addition to the pure administrative function. And that is the way of welcoming, hosting, as another sentence was called, supporting or supported by function that cannot find an expression elsewhere in the city. And if those functions are not part of the civic building, certainly they are certainly missing some of their the qualities. Of course, there are different roles for civic landscape in our days. You can do that, diversify the function either by location, instead of a standalone structure, to have a complex structure. In the States, they are building now civic campuses. It's not called university campuses or campuses, academic campuses. It's the civic campuses. I have an example. Civic campuses in Canada, the big civic campuses, which have several faces around it, which is a very interesting idea that you mix all the functions in the campuses, which is the civic places which belong to the community. Or by program to go beyond the traditional mission, we discussed that, or by using the public space more effectively in order to leverage more additional activities, for example, the library, the university and the library and the garden of the university. The city of Vienna, despite the fact it is an emblematic signal of strong power, has opened its courtyard, the front yard, for activities which are far beyond the administrative function or political function. It has been elected. Okay, that traditional institution can change. New role for civic buildings is what I said. In Canada, in Vaughan, it's the Civic Center campus, which include library, civic square, pool, skating rink, garden, parkland, and others, and plenty of other things. Quality of availability place, no need. Tallinn. How that apply to Tallinn? Tallinn is going to have a new civic center, yes, but the civic center is part of a larger program which is reconnecting with the sea. It has been presented this morning, and if you look at in a very dynamic way, you see that the new civic center will be at the crossroad of three major development axes. The north axis, north-south axis, which link the new civic center and the Linnahalli to the old square, which is still in the tradition of the city. And that is an important axis. But at the same time, the new nexus, the new core of the city, the new kneecap, the fulcrum, we'll say, is you are creating, moving the city hall in that place will create a new possibility to articulate the development along those three axes. On one, east-west, obviously, along the waterfront, but also toward the residential area on the west side and the end of the peninsula, the center, not only the old historic center, but also the new center, and of course, all the area around the harbor, the Linnahalli, the cultural cauldron, and so on. And that means that you should not miss the opportunity of the civic center, which is the city hall, because that will certainly be the condition of success of the rest of the redevelopment of the waterfront. In a sense, the waterfront project, if you look at all the projects or potential projects, there are at least 11 to 12 projects, with each of them is significant, and each of them is articulated around, along, or because of the City Hall and the Linen Alley strategic position, which is marked in a white dot. And that extends up to the Noble Snare docks, where there is a potential development project, but also include the Battery Barracks, the Fish Market, the new City Hall, the Linen Alley, the Cruise Harbour, the Ottoman Quarter, and the promenade extending toward the northeast. And each of them has a meaning, and each of them has a sense, but the sense and the meaning depends on the articulations with the new district, which is redistributing activities and the morphology of the site. You will see also, and this is certainly a challenge for the city, that there is a lot of, it's very dense, it's highly constructed, very dense, beyond, at the back of the waterfront. So the waterfront development is a very thin layer, or very thin corridors. It has no depth, no development depth. It's very difficult, it will be very difficult to articulate the waterfront with the rest of the city. So the connection between the different quarters and the different projects with the inland of the city will be critical in order to make it successful. For example, the connection between the Fish Harbour and the back situation of the barracks and the fisherman district, which is already very dense, already inhabitable. So that is a challenge, but we will discuss that in a few minutes. So, what are the issues that we want to discuss this morning, and it's part of the discussion we had over the last 2 days? Certainly the passenger port. It's not only a gate, but it's also a destination, not only for visitors, but also for the citizens. This is why the port intends to have some kind of amusement or leisure park and better shops and so on, in order to attract not only, I said, visitors, external visitors, but the citizen as well, and to make a destination an internal destination. However, we should avoid some generic solution, to be much more creative in order to match the creativity of the City Hall, the new City Hall, but also to balance the development opportunities with the technical needs. The second issue that we want to discuss is the waterfronts and the difficulties that exist to animate these waterfronts. Need a vision that could clarify the course of change and the connection to the old and the new city has said so. So we are going to discuss issues, so how urban areas can change and the key role of the civic landscape in that relation. Is there a comprehensive concept for the development of the area? And that would be interesting to discuss it. How to erase boundaries between the different sectors, different quarters, different buildings which exist along the waterfront, and how to make space to live, which is the changing process which has been explained. Another issue that we are going to discuss now is the interaction with the stakeholders. We recognize that there are positive forces in the area to work with, but who are they? How to engage them into a social and civic potential, how to develop their social and civic potential. What kind of social forum could be established to discuss urban projects? How to give the opportunity to citizens to create creative environment, and in the new economy, how to provide spaces for the young entrepreneurs, the small entrepreneurs, by the city, by the public sectors, and take advantage of the location of the new Civic Center in order to create a developing quarter, an innovative quarter, a creative quarter. Should the project be transitional or to be massive investment, and how a transitional project can, transitory and transitional development, extracting revenue from existing or investing in massive capital investment could create the condition for future market, and the City Hall itself. A lot of questions about the City Hall itself. It has been said this morning that the City Hall is the city, and so therefore how the city, meaning the people of Tallinn, find their way, their place into the City Hall. This is certainly a very important question. The City Hall is a chance. It's a chance because the inside of the new City Hall is certainly going to improve the management of the city itself, improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the City Hall. It's also a challenge because the outside of the city has to be addressed as well. It was said by our colleague yesterday. And we have to clarify the reading, the interpretation of the City Hall. What is the messages that the new City Hall is sending to the people, to the investors, to the community, to Europe, to European Union? You are a European capital. So you have a message to address also to the other European capitals of the European Union. So what is the message? And certainly the City Hall does not end the transformation process. It's the beginning of a process or a continuation of the process. And it has to be started in the right footing so that it can trigger the development of the other side, particularly of the waterfront, all the different spots that we have in These are the issues we discussed over the last days. So I'm inviting all the speakers from this morning to take place, and each of you have to respond to all these questions.